Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Benji-Sales live chat. It's so good to be back. It's so good to see everybody. We are back after a week off. Can you let me know in chat if my mic is okay and that it's not blowing everyone's eardrums out? Because I had a thing earlier where I had to mess with my mic, and I want to make sure it's not going crazy like it was that one time. So can you really quick chat, just let me know if I'm blowing y'all's eardrums out. I'm hoping not. But anyways, welcome to another episode of the Benji-Sales live chat. It's so good to be back. So good to see everybody after I took last week off. I took it off for a couple of reasons. I was just, I mentioned on Twitter I'd been going through a bit of like a health scare, stress from like Twitter and stuff like that. So, but everything's good to go now. We're back. So it's great to be back. It's great to see everybody. All right. Sounds like the mic is good. What is up? So we've got some juicy topics to talk about. Not a big turnout right now in terms of people in chat, but we have really good things to discuss. So I'm hoping people start bouncing in. I hope they start asking a bunch of questions because this is actually not a slow news week. This is a heavy news week. We got a lot of topics we can talk about. So for anyone, if this is your first time ever as part of this live chat, which I'm doubting it is because, like I said, very small number in chat right now, so I'm guessing it's all my regulars. But just in case you're new to this chat, the way it works, it's a stream, it's a show, it's 100% driven by you, your comments, your questions. You just drop them into chat, and I get to questions as many as I can during the chat. There's going to be two ways to do that. First of all, of course, there's the free method. You just type a question, whatever you want. It pops into chat, and I get to as many free questions as I possibly can. If you want to guarantee that I get to your question, way to do that's going to be the super chat option. Type a donation, whatever you want, pops into super chat, and I get to super chats immediately. So what can we talk about, right? I said off the top, we have some really good topics this week. Not a slow news week. Well, really, it's PlayStation heavy. So if you're an Xbox fan, feel free to ask Xbox questions, but I'm sure it's mostly going to be focused around Sony and PlayStation right now because they dropped a ton of news from their briefings, right? They did basically, they reported their earnings a little while back, and then just yesterday they did last night, they did their segment briefings where they basically, each segment broke down exactly what's going on, whether it was Sony Pictures, whether it was the video game side, and we got quite a bit of info and data out of that. So first of all, let's talk about PC sales numbers. That's right. We don't have to theorize and guess. We have hardcore data from Sony on PC. We found out exactly how much their three biggest launches on PC have sold. So for Horizon Zero Dawn, on PC, it has sold 2.39 million units. That's pretty substantial. That's a good result. Over 2 million, that's pretty good considering it was a really late port, and they earned 60 million in revenue off that. That's nice, right? That's nothing to sneeze at. That's nothing to ignore. $60 million, a lot of money. Days Gone has sold 852,000 units, and that is 22.7 million in revenue, so nice to see there. And God of War just short of a million, 971,000, which has made 26.2 million in revenue. But something to keep in mind there, God of War has come out the most recent of these, right? So it's, I've seen a lot of people being like, how come Horizon sold so much more than God of War? God of War is such a great game. Horizon hit PC quite a bit before God of War did, right? So, and that's already been discounted. Horizon's already been part of sales. It's already been discounted. God of War was a more recent release than Horizon, and it also hasn't had any really steep discounts on Steam yet. So that number is going to climb, right? I'm not going to say it's for sure going to pass Horizon. Who knows? But that's a big key difference about why Horizon's number is so much higher than what God of War's is. So keep that in mind when you look at this number. Now, another big thing we found out here is they're projecting huge growth on PC sales this next fiscal year, right? So what just started from April to March of 2023, this next 12 months in that window, they're expecting gigantic growth. How much growth? Well, to put it in perspective, for fiscal year 21, their net sales was 80 million. They're forecasting 300 million. That is gigantic growth. So what does that mean? Well, clearly there's going to be some big PC ports coming from Sony. Just no question about it. That kind of growth, you're not going to get that off of just continuing, to sell copies of Days Gone and God of War, which are already out, and maybe Uncharted Collection, right, which we know is coming. Clearly there's some other really big hitters to have that kind of growth, to go from 80 million to 300 million. Pretty interesting there. So we've got that. Another piece of info we got. Now, keep in mind, this is going to be somewhat skewed because of shortages, but Sony basically highlighted how PlayStation 5, whenever it's available, sells so much faster than PlayStation 4. They put out a whole bunch of data behind it. Definitely shows, here's the thing to keep in mind, because I had some people commenting on it, being like, oh, this is just fluff PR, and this is just Sony trying to make the data look good and it's bots and all of that kind of stuff. And these are partially true statements, right? Sony wants to put out the message that, hey, even though we're selling slower than PlayStation 4 did launch line, the demand's there. So they're going to make that look as best as they can. But it does illustrate, even looking through the PR, that there's still so much demand for PS5, right? So we clearly can see that there's still a ton of people that want these consoles and that it continues to sell like crazy whenever it's actually available. Another really interesting piece of data we got around that, like I just mentioned, PlayStation 5 is selling slower than PlayStation 4 launch line because of shortages. Here's something interesting that goes back into Sony, forecasting 18 million for this fiscal year coming up for fiscal year 22. They said that it's going to continue to fall behind PlayStation 4 launch line for now. They're actually forecasting, and we'll see if they can hit this, that in fiscal year 23, they gain that ground back, and that it's actually after that going to start being ahead of PlayStation 4 launch aligned. So if that's true, they didn't put the number out, but for that to be true, they must be expecting to sell a ton of PS5s in fiscal year 23. So keep that in mind. That's a very interesting data point. We won't know for sure for another year from now, so that's something further out. But it was interesting that Sony made that comment that they think that they're going to be able to regain back what they've lost on PS4 starting in fiscal year 23. That means that internally they're forecasting huge numbers starting in fiscal 23. Some other info we got out of here. Huge growth is expected within new IPs within Sony, right? The games that they're making. And one thing they did to illustrate that, in 2019, 77% of their investment on first-party games was with existing IPs, so, franchises that they already had, and only 23% of it was for building new IP. But they're saying now, by fiscal year 2025, that it's going to be a 50-50 split. So 50% of their investment will be on games that on IP that they've already created, and 50% of it's going to be on new IPs. So that clearly shows a lot of new IPs going to be in the works coming from Sony. The last thing I'm going to point out here before I start getting into your comments and questions is that they announced that there are big series coming from PlayStation Productions. They said that Horizon is going to be coming to Netflix. They said God of War is going to be coming to Amazon, which was previously reported. It wasn't confirmed, but now we have confirmation. Deadline, I think it was, who originally ran the story, came out, it was like a few months back, and said that they had contacts saying that this was going to happen. Sony has now confirmed it. So we got Horizon at Netflix, God of War coming to Amazon Prime Video, and then Gran Turismo they also announced, but there was no partner announced for it. So just, we know that some sort of Gran Turismo series is coming, but who knows where that will be or what it will be. So I'm sure there's going to be some questions about that. Clearly, Sony continues to heavily invest in PlayStation Productions. I was watching the presentation and they kept talking during the Sony's Pictures segment about how Uncharted overperformed. They're clearly very happy with Uncharted. You're going to get an Uncharted movie sequel. Trust me, it's going to happen. They just kept saying it over and over again during Sony Pictures. Uncharted did so good. It overperformed. It did amazing. So you're going to get a lot more PlayStation Production stuff coming from Sony. All right, everybody, that's all the stuff I'm going to point out off the top. I'm going to start diving into your comments and questions, and let's get going. Thanks for filling that chat up. Thanks for, a pretty good turnout now compared to when the stream first started. So let's get rocking, everybody. Joseki here is going to be kicking us off. Benji, what is up? What do you think of Dragon Quest XII and Dragon Quest III Remake not being shown on today's Dragon Quest event? I think 3 Remake may be 2023 and 12 2024 at the earliest at this point. Yeah, clearly both projects are still pretty far away. Especially I would say Dragon Quest 12, because even though we already got an announcement about that, it's been a while back now. When was that announced? It was Tokyo Game Show, I think, but was that the last Tokyo Game Show in September? I honestly can't remember if that was the exact date that they announced it, but I want to say it was. I could be misremembering here. Might have even been before that. Might have even been a year before that, but clearly it's still going to be pretty far away. It sounds like that this is going to be a pretty drastic change for the franchise. I expect it to still have a lot of core Dragon Quest DNA, but whenever they've talked about Dragon Quest 12, they've talked about how they're really going to evolve it. There's going to be some pretty significant changes. So to me, this reads like they're really going to make Dragon Quest 12 much more of a play for the West. I'm sure it's still going to have a ton of Japanese, Dragon Quest heritage in it, right? I don't think this is just going to be a completely different game. It's still going to be Dragon Quest, but the vibe I got from the way this game was announced is that they want to grow this series in the West, because as gigantic as Dragon Quest has been in Japan, it's done well in the West. Particularly Dragon Quest 11, you saw some growth there, but it hasn't been like huge. For example, Dragon Quest in the West isn't near the size that Final Fantasy is, right? That's just a way bigger brand in the West than Dragon Quest, whereas in Japan, you could argue Dragon Quest is bigger, that they're neck and neck or whatever. So I think they want to get Dragon Quest up there too. So it's going to take a while because they're doing a lot of stuff with this game. Remake, it's hard to say. I agree with you. Probably next year. I think if it was this year, they probably would have said something. So I agree with you, Joseki. Definitely Dragon Quest 12 isn't this year, and probably 3 Remake as well. I just can't see it till next year. SD. Sup, Benji? Jim Ryan, in a single 30-minute presentation, generated every kind of news for PlayStation. Yeah, well, that in the slides. I would say like I saw 10 different articles with 10 different topics. What do you think of Sony's future with live services, 12 live service games between now and 2025? And Bungie will be extremely important in that. It seems more and more important than just acquisition. They will review every step of every live service game for Sony according to the screenshot of the interrogation of Bungie and integration of Bungie and SIE from yesterday's Jim Ryan presentation. Okay, so what can we take away in terms of Bungie and live services? Yeah, the very clear message you're getting from Sony, and they've been saying this from the beginning, but they continue to emphasize it, which shows how important this is. The Bungie acquisition wasn't just about getting Destiny, and it wasn't just about getting Bungie's next new IP. Obviously, those are big things, right? Getting Destiny that you completely own and control, that's a gigantic service game. It's still, without question, one of the biggest games as a service games on the market, even today, right now. Think about how long ago Destiny and Destiny 2 came out. That game's still huge. If you look at the Xbox most played charts, if you look at Steam most played charts, that game is still constantly hitting in your top. I mean, for Xbox, it's in the top 10 basically always, right? I'm not mentioning PlayStation here because we don't have a PlayStation most played chart. But clearly, if it's top 10 on Xbox, on most played basically every single week, it would probably be the same story on PlayStation. So getting Destiny is awesome. Getting whatever that new IP that Bungie's making is awesome. But they continue to emphasize that Bungie's going to be core for helping PlayStation Studios as a whole get a grip on live service games, how to develop them, how to, run them, how to keep them healthy. And you can't really have too much better of an acquisition for games as a service than Bungie. So this is going to be really big, not just for what Bungie's future is, but what they're going to be able to do to help the other studios. Now, I see a lot of people worried because like what you're mentioning here, 12 live service games between now and 2025. A lot of people very worried that means Sony's going to abandon single player. I would not worry too much about that yet. Sony just sees the market. They see how popular free-to-play games are. They see how popular multiplayer games are. And the reality is, one criticism you could make of Sony's first party last gen, I know people that love single-player games are going to say that this isn't a negative. But if you're looking at it from a business, it is. One negative you could put on Sony's first party last gen, which was outstanding. They had a ton of successes, a ton of amazing games. They had very little multiplayer and very little service games. So many of their projects were just these single-player narrative-focused games, which are great. They need to continue to make those. That's the DNA of PlayStation. That's gotten what so many PlayStation fans invested in their first party. But you also do need to marry that with some service games, some online multiplayer type games, because there's so much money to be made there. So I hope, I don't know, we'll have to see how this all plays out. I hope Sony's not diverting investment from single player games to do this. I hope it's more of an additive thing. They're saying, hey, our single player is great. We're going to keep doing that, but we're also going to invest now in multiplayer. I'm hoping. We'll have to watch. We'll have to see how it goes. But yeah, clearly Sony is really ramping up those service games, and Bungie's going to be a huge part of that. Joseph Crank. Benji, PlayStation on PC is no joking around. Yes, if I am reading well the charts, they had 80 million plus lifetime to date with Days Gone, God of War, and Horizon Zero Dawn, and they want that to be now 300 million, almost 3 times more. I think they will release everything in PC. What games do you think they will launch on PC now? And do you think all live service games are going to be on PC day one? Bring on the filthy. Shout out Joseph Prank to Bring on the Filthy. I think that's a John Campea reference. I've mentioned it before. Love John Campea. Watch the John Campea show every single day. Bring on the Filthy. Great crew over there. So what do I think? In terms of this, I briefly mentioned the PC sales off the top. But yes, let's talk about this. What does that mean? What does that $300 million number mean? Because that's huge growth from 80 million to 300 million in a fiscal year. Like you said, you're basically talking about 3 times growth. So one thing worth noting, because I was wondering this myself, I was like, I'm guessing that that's probably going to include Bungie. But here's the thing. Bungie isn't scheduled to close until December, right? So I was thinking, obviously, it's still more than just, hey, we think Destiny's going to boost all the sales. Because, I mean, if you're not even thinking that that's going to close until December, that means they're only going to contribute to half your fiscal year anyway. So that's giant growth for something that's only going to be there for maybe 6 months of your fiscal year. But then Jim Ryan came out and said during a Q&A session, that's not including Bungie. That's just $300 million, not including what they're going to eventually expect from Bungie. Because I guess since it's not actually acquired yet, they're not going to put that into their forecast. So that's incredible. That means ginormous growth. There are going to be some big titles hitting. You do not expect that kind of growth and just launch the Uncharted collection, right? We saw reports today that it looks like Returnal's coming. I absolutely expect that. There have been rumblings, and I'm not going to confirm this here, but I will just say there have been rumblings that Horizon Forbidden West is going to be hitting PC much faster than Zero Dawn did. Now, does that mean that it hits this fiscal year? I don't know, but I will just tell you that this isn't a secret. There's been rumblings behind the scenes for a while, since before that game even came out, that Horizon Forbidden West was going to have a much faster turnaround to PC than Zero Dawn did. Again, I don't know that that necessarily means it hits this fiscal year, but maybe. And if it doesn't hit this fiscal year, I definitely think it's going to be out, by next year at the latest, right? This game's not going to be like 3 or 4 years later, in my opinion. It's going to be more like 1 to 2 years. So that is an interesting wrinkle. Maybe. It looks like Returnal's going up. And here's the question. Yeah, are these service games going to be day one on PC? I think they are. And we know that they have 2 service games scheduled to launch this fiscal year. So one of those probably is going to be a PC day one title. I've mentioned it before, right when Sony was doing all of this type of stuff, when they were first experimenting with PC, people kept asking me what games are going to be day one. And the thing I always said, I can't see them doing it for the single player stuff, but I think for the multiplayer games they will. Because the key with multiplayer is you want the biggest amount of people playing your game as possible. Because that's more people you can sell microtransactions to, that's more people you can sell DLC to, and that's more people playing those multiplayer games telling their friends, yo, you need to be picking this up, you need to be playing this with me, let's group up and play together. So you're getting way more people. For single player games, don't get me wrong, that stuff's great too, but you're selling usually on a single player game way less microtransactions. You're probably selling less DLC, right? You're probably just doing like bulk DLC when there's new expansions every, let's say, 4 to 6 months or something like that. And you have a longer tail in terms of you don't need to necessarily get everybody playing your game day one because it's not a multiplayer service game. You can just continue to have people buy in way later down the line. For multiplayer, you want a lot of people playing. So I do expect, Joseph, I'm not going to say every single one because who knows what Sony's plans are, but I do think you are definitely going to see some first-party service games hit day one on PC as well, but probably not single-player stuff. I think that will all have, I think the single-player focused games will probably have a minimum of a 12-month window of exclusivity on console and then come to PC. But who knows? We'll have to see. Travel Peck. Benji-Sales, thank you for always being here with these amazing streams. Well, thank you so much. That's very kind. I love doing these streams. I took a break last week. There was a variety of reasons for that, but I'm really glad to be back. Jim Ryan in the QA session was asked about M&A acquisitions, and he was very clear. Hey, not finished with the strategy of, for now, PlayStation Studios inorganically. He said that PlayStation is now in a wider and much broader market, and that inorganic stimulus will be required to help us realize these dreams. And potential targets will allow us to accelerate that strategy. We will consider M&A activity to add to our portfolio. I think more than one acquisition is coming, and I feel there's a big one coming. The way Jim Ryan is speaking is like they will be aggressive. My only question is, what do you think of this, and what studios out there with all this information could they buy? Thanks, and always positive. Okay, so basically asking, clearly we know more acquisitions are coming. This isn't new from Jim Ryan, but it is clear they continue to double down. There is an entire slide about acquisitions in this presentation. Like literally it was a whole slide. It was showing all of the purchases, and I noticed the headline said ongoing. It didn't say, hey, past acquisitions we want to highlight, or hey, look at all this stuff we did, now it's break time. It literally was like ongoing acquisition, ongoing M&A activity, and then Jim Ryan was saying the same thing. We're not done, we're buying more. I always get asked about acquisitions. I'm expecting more. I'm expecting Sony to get someone very big. I don't know who that's going to end up being. A lot of rumblings, of course, as we know that there was Square Enix talk. I don't know who it's going to be in terms of a big one, but I think so. I think there is going to be one very, very big one, like a big daddy. I don't know what it's going to be. Maybe that does end up being Square Enix. Maybe it ends up being somebody else. Who friggin' knows? But I think they're going to get at least one major acquisition, because we know right now the only huge one they made, in terms of wow, this is gigantic in the last few years, was Bungie. Most of these other acquisitions, they have huge potential, huge upside, but they were smaller studios, right? They were people like Housemarque, again, excellent, but they're a small studio. It was people like Bluepoint, excellent, but not a giant studio. It was more of this kind of vein. Bungie was the first one where it was we're dropping billions to get Bungie. I think you're going to see at least one more like that, where it's a huge multi-billion-dollar acquisition. Could be Square Enix, not sure. I keep saying I think that they're eventually going to get Ember Lab. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me not to get Ember Lab unless Ember Lab doesn't want to sell, because A, they're going to be cheap, because they're not a huge studio with a ton of games that have come out. So now's the time to scoop them up, especially because Kana did well for them, and that could clearly be a mascot character for Sony moving forward. But you never know. Maybe Ember Lab wants to remain independent. That is possible. Could be that Sony approached them and Ember Lab's like, nope, we don't want to sell yet. We want to, get more successful and maybe sell down the line when we think we could get more money. Who knows? But Travel, I do think you're going to see some more, and at least one giant one. At least one really, really big one. Benji here. How do you feel about the next live-action choice from Sony? They seem to favor subscription services rather than cinema. Isn't that surprising after Uncharted's success? Well, keep in mind, Ghost of Tsushima is a movie, I believe, right? Didn't we get that confirmed? Ghost of Tsushima, I'm 99% sure Ghost of Tsushima is a movie and not a streaming series. Benji, I think they're going to balance this. Here's the thing. As awesome as having a big movie is, long term, the potential to have really big streaming series is potentially, and it is just a potential, could be even possibly more important than a movie. Look at what happened with Game of Thrones. Look at what happened with Stranger Things, right? We need to see what happens, but trust me, everyone in this industry right now wants the next Game of Thrones, whatever that's going to be. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be fantasy, but they want that next friggin' Game of Thrones. It's going to sell a ton of friggin' merch. It's going to get people watching every single week, talking to people, and getting years and years and years out of it, right? With movies, it's like you drop that movie, it does really well, and then you're not really doing anything in terms of, you might get some sales afterwards, but you don't have a box office for multiple years until the next movie comes out. With streaming series, if you could get it to where it's releasing yearly, we know that hasn't been the case recently, but that was a big part of that was because of the pandemic. So many shows got delayed, filming got messed up. But if you can get it to where a series is airing every year, every 14, 16 months, you have a way more constant stream of engagement and stuff. So I think that's one reason why Sony really wants some series. I think they want, God of War to be huge. Maybe they think that could be the next Game of Thrones for them, or maybe Horizon can. You're going to still definitely see some movies, Benji. Like I said, Uncharted sequel is absolutely going to happen. I think we already have confirmation Ghost of Tsushima is going to be a movie. But they are starting to use a lot of their IPs. It's a good point. They've narrowed themselves down. There's not a ton of IP left that are big IPs for them that they could spin into movies. Maybe some of their new IP, if they're successful, could be. Trying to think what giant IP they might be sitting on still that isn't rumored to be getting any adaptation. Infamous? I mean, if you want to go into the superhero field, I mean, maybe they could think Infamous could be a movie. Not sure. But it is interesting, Benji. But I think that's partially why. I think they want to turn some of these into like really big, gigantic shows. So we'll have to see, though. Miles Morales. Hey there, Benji. Hope you're doing well, especially since there was no live stream last week. Hope it is working and not something else. There was personal reasons for me skipping last week, but I'm back. We're good. Do you think in 2023 most games will be next-gen only? Many of these games, yes. I already know some of them are. So we'll have to see, both announced and unannounced. So we'll have to see. Miles, am I going to go as far as to say most? Do I want to go that far and say most? Because that means you're majority. I kind of think so. Yeah. I kind of think you will be at next year most. I think most of the games you're going to see announced during these summer showcases will be cross-gen, current gen only from Western studios. Japan will still be cross-gen for a long time. And you will still see some cross-gen games coming from Western studios. But like, for example, during this stream, I'm going to let you know there's a very high chance that Star Wars Jedi Survivor is about to be announced. Heavily rumored that's going to be announced during the Star Wars Celebration, which is about to start. Here in about 30 minutes is when the panel starts. That game's current gen only, at least from all of the rumblings and reports. There is no cross-gen version of that. We found out that multiple games, Gotham Knights and Test Drive Unlimited, both canceled their cross-gen versions. They're now current gen only. So you are seeing the industry start to move away from it, Miles. The reality is the install base starting in 2023. We talked about this on my last chat. But by next year, that install base is big enough, you can kind of leave last gen behind. Unless you're like a sports game or something. We're going to be talking if Sony can hit their forecast of 18 million. They're going to be well over 30. The fact, I think the numbers are going to be 36 million units of install base. By next year, Xbox is going to be over 20 million on install base. You're going to be combined between the two, early next year, not late. By early next year, as long as these people can hit their forecasts, you're going to be looking at over 50 million install base, approaching 60 million install base early in 2023. That's enough consoles. You don't need last gen on most of these games. So yeah, Miles, I'll go as far as to say probably, yeah, most games will be current gen only, but you will still see some. It's not going to be, there's going to be no cross gen, but most games, yeah, will be current gen only next year. Still made sense to be cross gen in 2022, but not so much in 2023, unless you're like a sports game or a really casual game. Eddie Brock. I am curious, do you think it is possible that an X-Men game will be developed sometime in the future? I mean, a game based on the entire team, not just Logan. Maybe around the time they appear in the MCU. Probably, Eddie. I would rank that as actually extremely likely. Could come from Insomniac, to be honest with you. If Logan's a huge... or it's Wolverine, not Logan. If that game's a huge success, wouldn't shock me at all if you see... another game from Insomniac that uses more of the characters. Maybe it's not the entire team, but maybe you see... I mean, do we all think that the Wolverine game is going to have 0 X-Men characters in it? Clearly there's going to be X-Men characters, right? Probably not going to play as them. Probably. You never know. Probably Wolverine's going to be your only playable character, but clearly you're going to see other X-Men characters appear in this game. So, if it's a big success and you already have Insomniac creating versions of these characters, wouldn't shock me at all if you see them do a full-on X-Men game after that. Wouldn't shock me at all. Like, at all. Could you see it from a third-party studio? Also possible as well. But the one I'm going to keep my eye on right now is going to be Insomniac, since we already know they're delving into that universe. If Wolverine does really, really well, you'll see more X-Men from them. I think we just had a super chat drop. Thank you so much. That's the first super chat of the chat. Wow, look at these. Look at that bot. That is a hilarious bot name. Wow. That is something funny that was being spammed in the chat. Wow. Thank you for JCat for getting rid of that bot. That's hilarious. Benji here with a 5. Oh, wow. 2 super chats coming in. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Benji with a 5. Sony says they will stop making PS4 games in 2025. Does that mean cross-gen could be a thing until then for some games? So 12 years of PS4 gaming. I would have to look at the slide again. I don't know that that's exactly how it was phrased. It might have been. There was a lot of slides, y'all. A lot. I think it was more just that they were saying they were going to continue to support the PlayStation 4 for years and years. I don't know though that it said that like straight up they're just going to be making tons of, and I could be wrong here. One sec, I'm trying to pull up the slide. So it's a good question. But I think it was more just like, hey, we're going to continue to support PS4. Not necessarily that, hey, all our games are going to be on PS4. Because there's a big difference there. But let me double check this. I've got the slides pulled up right now. All right. Wow. So, wow, looking at this on a phone is really annoying. Longer late cycle. Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm just not seeing the thing that straight up says we're making cross until 2025. Unless that came in the Q&A session, but I don't see it in the slides. My guess is they mean they're going to continue to support PS4 for probably until 2025. And that, keep in mind, part of that is going to probably be live service stuff. I do think, for example, that this Last of Us Factions 2 game that we all know is coming, right? We all know that game's on the way. It's no secret. Factions 2. I don't know that's going to be called Factions 2, but Naughty Dog's The Last of Us multiplayer game. That's probably going to be cross-gen, right? Because like I was mentioning earlier, you want the most players possible on a multiplayer project. That's probably going to be cross-gen. If the plan is to support this game for years and years and years, that's going to push support for PS4 on a first-party basis on that game down the line, right? For years. We don't know if some of these other service games are going to be cross-gen. So, Benji, do I still think you're going to see some PS4 cross-gen stuff from Sony? Absolutely. I've said that before. I think you're still going to see a little bit. Do I think that most of their single-player games that are in the works, like, do I think Spider-Man 2? No, they already confirmed that's PS5 only, right? Pretty sure that Insomniac flat out said that. So, no. I think the single-player stuff, after this year, I don't see much cross-gen, to be honest with you. But I do think that some of their multiplayer projects, like Factions 2, this Last of Us game, probably going to be cross-gen. And that is, of course, going to continue PlayStation 4 support down the line if it is cross-gen. So, Benji, that's what I'm expecting. I don't know this for a fact, but my guess is that most of your single-player focused games are probably going to be current-gen only. Starting next year, right? We know God of War Ragnarok, for example, is cross-gen. But there might be still even 1 or 2 single-player games. It's possible, right? Definitely possible. Highlander with a 5 super chat. Thank you so much, Highlander. Very kind of you and great to see you in chat. Benji, hope you're doing well. Hope you're taking time for yourself. Your thoughts on DLC not working with PS3 games on the new PlayStation Plus? Yeah, it's a problem, right? So, as much good news as there is coming out of PlayStation, and there's some stuff about the new PlayStation Plus I really like. I really like trophy support, for example. That's an awesome addition. There also, though, has been some issues. We know that Sony fixed the discount issue, right, that was going on, where if people bought the stacked Plus for the future, and, you know, they were trying to pull a thing where they were like, oh, we're going to upcharge you. Sony came out and said that that was an error. It was not an error, right? That was clearly PR speak on them changing things, which is fine. You can change stuff. Good for you. I'm glad that you listened to the feedback and changed your mind. I don't think that was an error. I don't think most people buy into it that, oh, this was a technical error. I don't think most people buy into that. You never know. Maybe it was, but I'm doubtful. That was an issue. Some of these games that we're seeing aren't running the greatest, right? There was some analysis that came out, for example, this is a random game, but it was like a Toy Story backwards compatible game, and it was having really rough performance. It seems that in terms of frame rate, we don't know because a lot of this stuff's not out yet, but it seems that Sony's like just hardcore emulating these games, like to be just about in terms of like performance how they originally were. Doesn't look like most of these games are going to have like necessarily better performance, right? Which I think a lot of us were hoping that these backwards compatible games, maybe we would see 60 FPS on more of these games, right? Or more locked frame rates because it's so much more powerful hardware. Doesn't, at least for now, appear that Sony's doing that. As you mentioned, they said that there is going to be issues with DLC working on like the streaming games because PS3 is going to be streaming, not native install. So there's still some issues, Highlander. There's no doubt there's still some issues with the new PlayStation Plus in terms of the backwards compatibility stuff. There's a lot of good here. I hope they can fix some of this. It's just starting, so we need to watch and see how it evolves down the line, right? Maybe a lot of this stuff gets ironed out and improved over the next couple of years, right? This is a brand new thing that they're doing. So I'm hopeful, but Highlander, there are some issues. There's no doubt. Anyone will tell you that. There's some really great stuff they're doing with New Plus, but there are some problems too. There's definitely some problems. Thank you for that super chat, Highlander. All right. Where we at on the question? Silence PP7. Oh, getting right into what we were just talking about. There are issues with Sony's PS1 emulation on PS5 with some games being PAL. Only 1440p and performance issues. Yep, that's what I was just mentioning. You also can't stream DLC in PS3 games. What should Sony do to get it on par with Xbox? Yeah, there is, like I said, there's some stuff I definitely want to see them improve on. Them using PAL versions is a bummer because that usually means worse frame rate, right? Some of these games are running at 25 FPS instead of like 30. And then, 1440p, it's nice to see at least an improvement over the original resolution, but it'd be great if a lot of these were 4K because the PS5 has the power for it. Again, DLC on PS3 is an issue. So there's definite issues. What should they do to get it on par with Xbox? I mean, it's going to take time. And the question is if Sony wants to put that kind of investment into it. I hope they do. If you're going to offer services like this, I'd love to see them as best as possible. There's some things that PlayStation's doing potentially better than Xbox with this, like trophy support for the classics. That's really cool. I hope that a lot of games get that. Xbox, it'd be great to see them add more achievements for like original Xbox games. So that's one area where you could give PlayStation a bit of an edge with this, is that they're adding some of that. But there's also no doubt some areas that they're falling behind Xbox in terms of backwards compatibility. I'm just hoping they improve it, but we'll have to see, Silence. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. Sony has been more, let's just say not as like aggressive or forward thinking with backwards compatibility as Xbox has been over the last few years. Right now it does feel like they're playing a bit of catch up in that regard, so hopefully they can improve it. Casual Gamer. Benji, do you think the PS5 Pro Leak by the TV company, which was TCL, is real? How would Sony handle the PS5 Pro when they're struggling with the normal PS5? So Casual, this was my take on it that I gave on Twitter. I'm pretty confident in this. Pretty sure TCL is just guessing here, right? TCL is a company that wants to sell 8K TVs. They want to say that, hey, new consoles are going to come out that support 8K, which they will. We're going to go into the mid-gen refreshes. It ain't going to be they're going to support 8K in terms of rendering. They're going to support 8K output, but we'll get into that in just a second. So do I think that TCL knows the roadmap and just leaked all the info about the mid-gen refreshes? No. I think TCL was putting this in a slide to kind of advertise, hey, this is why you need to get an 8K TV because in a few years there's going to be new consoles that do 8K. So that's what I think happened. Now, do I think PS5 Pro and an Xbox mid-gen refresh is coming? I'm as high as 99% sure that these are coming. I mentioned on Twitter, there's zero business reason to not do it. Last gen was the test and it worked. They accounted for roughly, give or take a month, right? Whenever I say roughly, this doesn't mean this always was the case, but sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. Those consoles were around 20% of your monthly sales. That's very useful late into a generation to keep those hardcore gamers engaged, to keep them buying new games, to keep them upgrading their consoles, spending that money, selling the consoles they have that somebody else is going to buy to get into your ecosystem. I'm like 99% sure we're going to get mid-gen refreshes. I was always confused why people thought it wasn't going to happen. The mid-gen refreshes last gen weren't just about 4K. That was like the advertising for it, but they didn't just randomly create those consoles because 4K was coming. Maybe that's what they were telling you, but that's not why. They wanted to just continue to sell new hardware, keep sales healthy, and keep revisions on the market and keeping your core, hardcore people engaged and not starting to buy games on PC, for example. That's going to happen again. You are going to get mid-gen refreshes. Are they going to happen in 2023? No, way too early. There's no reason to have, in my opinion, a mid-gen, because TCL slide said 2023 or 2024. 2023, it ain't happening. That's 3 years into the generation. There's no real reason to have a mid-gen refresh out that quick, particularly with shortages. But do I think by 2025 you're going to see a mid-gen Xbox and a PlayStation 5 Pro? Yeah, in fact, I would bet just about anything on it that will happen. Yes, it's definitely going to happen. They'll just say stuff like better ray tracing. Keep in mind, right now these consoles are barely doing ray tracing. You know, it's nice, there is ray tracing options there, but whenever these games are getting ray tracing, usually it's not full ray tracing, right? Usually it's picking, like either the game will do ray trace shadows, or the game will do ray trace reflections. And usually when this happens, these games are at like 1080p or 30 FPS. One way they'll be able to advertise a mid-gen refresh, they're going to say vastly improved ray tracing. They'll be able to say, hey, instead of 1080p 30 FPS on these games with just shadows or just reflections, here you go, 1440p maybe or better with, better frame rates, and maybe you get both. You're going to get reflections and shadows, right? They're going to be able to advertise that. Improved ray tracing is absolutely going to be part of the messaging of the mid-gen refreshes. They'll also have improvements to the SSD, I guarantee it. Do I think you're going to see a 4 times jump in GPU power like we saw in the last mid-gen refreshes? I'm a little more doubtful on that. Maybe double the GPU or something like that. I think the big gains you're going to see are going to be around that stuff. It's going to be ray tracing focused. It's going to be SSD, even speed improvements. As fast as they are, they'll probably make them even a little bit faster, things like that. So yes, mid-gen refreshes are coming, but probably TCL wasn't, I doubt they had any inside info. Yoda Soda. Benji Boy, what do you think is more likely? WB Games staying under WB Discovery, or them being bought by a publisher like Sony, Tencent, etc.? When could we see news that they get bought end of summer? You know what, Yoda Soda? I'm going to be honest with you. I think it's now more likely that WB gets sold than doesn't. And why am I saying that? Because I wasn't necessarily of this opinion previously. It's because anyone that's been paying attention to what's been going on since this merger happened, Zaslav, who is the guy in charge, right? David, I think is his first name. I think it's David Zaslav. He is the head of Discovery, who now owns WB. Anyone that's been paying attention with what happened since this acquisition, to reference John Campea, who I'm a big fan of, he calls it the axe of Zaslav, because the dude is canceling stuff left and right. He is making gigantic changes within WB. Canceling movie projects, canceling TV shows, completely changing the way CW works. Looks like they're getting ready to sell CW off. I don't know that David Zaslav sees that gaming is part of what he wants to run moving forward. Could be wrong, but that is hardcore the vibe I get, that he wants to double down, focus on DC. He wants to really build DC up and get DC really big. He wants to revive the Harry Potter brand. And the vibe that I get, from just watching the moves he's already making, he's all in on really getting movies really big from them and getting those core IP that they owned in terms of streaming shows and that very healthy. Gaming to me does not feel like something David Zaslav is going to want to run, that he's going to want to have a ton of investment in. Could be wrong. Again, I could be wrong on all this, but I'm just watching what's going on right now at Warner Discovery or Discovery Warner. And Yoda, I think they're going to get sold. If they can get a decent price for it, I think those studios are gone, yeah. And I wouldn't have necessarily told you that 4 weeks ago. But looking at it now, the big question is just if they can get money. If they can get money, those studios are gone. I can basically guarantee it. If they can get decent money out of it, they're gone. If they can't, because we've had this discussion before, those studios not coming with IP is a huge problem, then I don't know. But if they can get a decent price, those studios are not staying, in my opinion. Sounds PP7. 10th anniversary website of Dragon's Dogma went up recently. Is an announcement for Dragon's Dogma 2 imminent this year? Yes, it will be announced this year. It could be announced as soon as Summer Games Fest. Could we see a 60 FPS patch for the remaster, and how big do you see the game being? Great questions. So Dragon's Dogma, in my opinion, is a drastically underrated game. I love Dragon's Dogma, the first one. Now, is it a perfect game? No, it has some serious issues, actually. But back when that game came out, and I haven't played it recently, so I'm sure some stuff has aged pretty poorly. But when it came out, it was doing some stuff that felt so different than other RPGs that, man, it just felt cool. I loved Dragon's Dogma. The game wasn't a ginormous sales success. It sold a few million copies, but it wasn't something that was like a 10 million unit seller, right? So you kind of get why it was on the back burner for so long. But yes, Dragon's Dogma 2 is absolutely being announced this year. Like I said, it might be announced as soon as Summer Games Fest, which is in 2 weeks? Won't be shocked at all if it's there. Why am I so confident it's getting announced this year? There's a prime reason. We know, it's not a rumor, we know this game was scheduled to come out in Q2 of 2022. We were supposed to be playing this game right now. Clearly it got some sort of delay. The pandemic, it pushed the game back. I actually don't think it's going to come out this year anymore. I'm guessing this is going to be a 2023 release due to the pandemic. But that game was supposed to already be on the market, or about to be on the market in the next month or two. It's going to be announced this year. That's a fact. And this isn't a rumor. This is leaks from Capcom's own internal documents whenever they had that giant hack. We found out tons of stuff about Capcom's business. One of it was Dragon's Dogma 2 was in development with the Q2 2022 release date. Though that might have been fiscal Q2. I apologize. If that was fiscal Q2, then that would have been, 3 months out from whenever this ends. So I apologize. That, off the top of my head, I think it actually was fiscal year Q2. So in that case, it wouldn't have been out yet. But either way, you get what I'm saying. It was scheduled to be released this year. Again, I don't think that's happening anymore. I think this game's been pushed to 2023. But if it was going to come out this year, even if it got a full year delay, you're still going to announce it this year. So, yeah, they'll announce it for sure. Maybe Summer Games Fest. Absolute latest this thing gets announced as Game Awards, but I think there's a strong chance it gets announced in the next few months. How big do I see the game being? I think it will definitely outsell the first game. In fact, I'm really confident in that because the first game, like I said, there are some awesome stuff about the first game, but even back then, there was some stuff people had big issues with. And I think the overall, that style of game, like Elden Ring, for example, and keep in mind, Dragon's Dogma and Elden Ring have some hardcore differences, but there actually is surprisingly some bit of overlap. The way we've seen games like that blow up, the way we've seen games like Monster Hunter blow up, I do think Dragon's Dogma 2 outsells the first. I think it does really, really well. But do I think that this is like a guaranteed 10 million plus seller? I'm not going to go that far. It would be awesome, but I definitely think this outsells the original. I definitely think this probably gets to 5 million plus. 10 million plus is a harder hill to climb. If it's really freaking good, it's possible. Because like I said, look at how Monster Hunter blew up. Look at how Elden Ring blew up. The way we're seeing some of these RPGs out of Japan really accelerate in growth. I'm not going to say 10 million plus is impossible, but I'm not going to go that high for a prediction. But I will say I think it can do over 5 million for sure. I'd be very surprised if this game sells under 5 million. Even Devil May Cry 5, which is an action game, is selling those kinds of numbers. So, I'm pretty confident in that. Venom Harness. What's your thoughts on the news that Xbox not only turned down Marvel, but also Star Wars? Yeah, if this is true, man, I don't think that was the right call, but let's see. Not only turned down Marvel, but also Star Wars. Is it shocking? Could they partner with both in the future, or do you think their relationship is soured? Multiple good questions here. So let's tackle them one at a time. My thoughts on if they turned down both Marvel and Star Wars. I'm going to be honest, I think that was probably an error in retrospect. At the time, though, it might not have seemed like it as much because I believe that when this was happening, and I could be wrong, but I believe that this was like the Marvel one was before Spider-Man was even out. So Marvel hadn't had these like giant sales successes yet. So at the time, it might have seemed like, I mean, maybe this game might do okay, but like, we don't really know how it's going to sell. Yeah, the Marvel movies are huge, but are the games? Because I believe that was the report, that it was before Insomniac even made Spider-Man. So Marvel I can somewhat understand, because again, at the time, it might not have seemed like the greatest deal in the world. Now, put it this way, if Marvel comes to Xbox right now, and Xbox has a team that wants to work on it, because that's the other thing too. I don't know that you necessarily make a deal and force one of your teams to do it, but if you have a studio that's like Xbox approaches and they're just like, hey, do you guys want to make a Marvel game? And they're like, yeah, actually, we really want to make a Marvel game. I think you make that deal now. But it might not have made as much sense back then. Now, it worked out great for Sony and Insomniac, right? Worked out amazing for them. But, you know, you didn't have a guarantee that that was going to happen beforehand. The previous Spider-Man games never sold at that kind of volume, not even close. So that took it to a different level. Now, with Star Wars, I'm not 100% sure if this was, I believe this had to have been after Fallen Order came out, right? I'm not positive on that, but I think it had to have been because it had to be after the EA deal closed, right? I think. I haven't actually read this. It comes from a book, but if that was after Fallen Order, it was a mistake. Yeah, I'm just going to say it. I think it was a mistake. Again, unless you had a team, like you had no teams that wanted to do it. But like, dude, Star Wars games are big business. They're big business. Even Battlefront 2, which was considered a bomb, sold millions of units. Battlefront 1, millions of units. Jedi Fallen Order, millions of units. In fact, as crazy as it sounds, Star Wars has been far more successful in games than Marvel has. That's just the truth. Now, there's been a huge success with Spider-Man, but we haven't seen these other Marvel games perform near that level. I think some of them might, but they haven't been near what Spider-Man has done. You look at Star Wars, though, and there's multiple giant, multiple million selling unit games in that long storied history. So that was probably pretty bad. That's probably a pretty bad idea, to be honest with you, if it's true and if this was after Fallen Order was a huge sales success. Now, do I think that this soured the relationship? Doubtful. I really can't see that as being as souring a relationship. These sorts of negotiations, business talks, these kinds of things, these are constantly always happening in the industry. Now, had this been a scenario where it was like a contract had been signed and a Marvel game was starting development at Xbox and it got canceled or, you know, whatever, like you were already in development and Xbox cancels the game, that sort of thing, yeah, that could sour a relationship. If this was just preliminary talks, it was just like, hey, do you guys want to partner on this? And Xbox turned them down. Highly doubtful that that was a souring of the relationship because from what I understand, Marvel and Star Wars under Disney have been approaching everyone. Everyone. Do you want to make a game? 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 I'm sure not everyone's telling them yes. So I doubt it soured it, and they could partner in the future. It is possible. I think we just had a super chat drop. Let me hit that super chat. We did. $10. Highlander. Holy cow, Highlander. That's your second super chat. You did not have to do that, and that's a generous one. Thank you, Highlander. Oh, Hamish just said, Jez just leaked Xbox streaming stick and Windows Central. Makes sense. That was inevitable. We'll go into that in just a second. JCat, thank you for getting the bot again. Thank you so much, JCat, for helping mod. You are amazing, JCat, for real. Thank you so much. You're a huge help, JCat. I seriously mean that. Highlander 001 with a 10. Oh, wow. It was back-to-back. It's actually about what Hamish was saying. Jez Corden is saying Xbox streaming stick is called Keystone. When do you think we will learn more? And do you think it will sell or will go the way of the Xbox Connect? No, this will do well. So here's the thing. I'm not reading this article, guys, so I don't have any context around this. So take whatever I'm saying if you're watching it right now live or if you're watching this video in the future. I'm literally saying this. The only info I have is what Highlander has posted here. So I'm sure there's a ton of great info out of here. Jez is an amazing reporter. Fantastic. So I'm sure Jez has a ton of info. Am I surprised that there's an Xbox streaming stick coming? 0% surprised. This always made sense. With the focus on xCloud, with the focus on Game Pass, this was always going to happen at some point. At some point, a streaming stick was inevitable. Now, do I think it will do well? Do I think it will sell? Yes, but to be clear, do I think that Keystone is going to come out and instantly sell 50 million streaming sticks, right? I'm not going to tell you that it's going to sell these kinds of numbers, right? They're just going to sell millions of streaming sticks like instantly. I don't think so. I think that this, just like xCloud, which they're intelligently doing, this is one area where I really give Microsoft props. They view xCloud, they view streaming as a slow build. Not as we're all in and we're converting everyone to streaming right now. Microsoft has been very smart about streaming, unlike, places like Stadia, that they were like, this is a part of our business, and this is a part of our business that will slowly build. That is the correct way to approach streaming. It's just a slow, steady increase. It's not just we're all in on streaming now. So do I think they're going to sell some of these streaming sticks? Absolutely. It's way cheaper than buying an Xbox. Way cheaper, right? If you, don't have $500 and you want to act, I'm guessing this thing's probably going to be cheap, right? Is this going to be like $50? I mean, I can't see it being over 100 max. I mean, the best streaming sticks you buy, like the, Amazon 4K, I sell them at my work. They're like $49.99. So, I mean, this thing's probably going to be like $50. Like I said, maximum 100. You can't sell a streaming stick for over $100. If they sell it at over $100, then it's DOA. But if this thing is $50, yeah, they're going to sell some of these. They're absolutely going to sell some of these. So it's smart. It makes sense to do. It will be a slow burn for them probably, but I think with time they'll get some nice, sales off of it. So yeah, I think it's smart and the right choice. Yep. Makes sense. And very interesting, and I'll have to read that article, Highlander, and thank you for the heads up. Okay. Oh, there was a super chat from Timmer. Thank you, Timmer, so much. There's a 2 super chat. Sorry, I missed that one pop up earlier. Just saying, keep being awesome. Sorry, just got back from work. Timmer, you keep being awesome. You keep doing great work on Twitter. Dude, it's all good. You don't need to drop a super chat every stream. I appreciate it so much, though, man. And you keep being awesome as well, dude. Thank you so much for the support. All right, where are we at? Thanks for a great turnout, by the way, today, guys. Stream ended up doing way better than I thought. Whenever we started, we were at just like 19 viewers, and we got up to almost 100. We were in the 90s there for a while. So thanks so much, guys. Thank you for a good turnout on the stream. Jason Benjamin, have you heard the news? The Marvel MMO got canceled, and Square Enix is likely done making Marvel games. Yeah, Square Enix probably should be done making Marvel games. We're getting less Marvel games than ever besides Insomniac. Could that change? Ooh, I don't know about that. Could we start getting many Marvel games from third-party publishers in the future? Jason, there are more coming. We know Amy Hennig's making a Marvel game as we speak. So no, there are definitely still Marvel games coming. It's just going to be, listen, Square Enix, I loved Guardians of the Galaxy. They did a poor job marketing that. I just have to be honest. I love that game. That game was a huge surprise, but the marketing around Guardians of the Galaxy was really poor. And I know that a lot of times, as a gamer, marketing might not be something that you think of much, but marketing can have a huge impact on sales. Like, trust me, it can have a very big impact. Your game still needs to be good too, but a good marketing campaign paired with a good game, that can really help sales. And I feel like, and I don't think this is a controversial take, I think a lot of people think this. I think Guardians of the Galaxy was poorly marketed. It didn't show well at E3. Some of the material they put out there, it wasn't marketed great. So, that hurt that game. Avengers, we all know the issues with that. Square Enix should be done with Marvel. They shouldn't be making Marvel games anymore. That's just not their wheelhouse. They shouldn't be doing it. I have a feeling this Amy Hennig game is going to probably be very successful. We don't know for sure what character it's based off of, but it's going to be heavy narrative focused. And I think that's the main reason Spider-Man's so good and so beloved, is there's no other comic book game out right now that tells as strong of a story and like is as much like I am in this world as Spider-Man. Even as much as I loved Guardians. And Guardians has a great story, and the character work, especially in Guardians, is amazing. But there's just something about the Spider-Man games that when you play them, you just really feel like you're in that world. And the Guardians game's kind of there. It's close, but I think that in terms of like feeling like I'm there, I would put Spider-Man a bit above it, even though Guardians has amazing character work. So, Jason, I wouldn't panic that there's going to be no more Marvel games. Midnight Suns is on the way as well. It's just the MMO game probably wasn't working, right? Games get canceled all the time, and sometimes people don't even hear about them. They just get canceled internally before they're ever even publicly announced. So I wouldn't take that as a sign there's no more Marvel. It's just the Square Enix stuff wasn't working, and this MMO game probably wasn't working. Batman Forever, after Wolverine is released, what do you think is next for Insomniac? Spider-Man 3 and what? X-Men or Wolverine 2? Yeah, we talked about that, and you'll also will get something else from Insomniac because they're always making tons of stuff. Put it this way. Are you going to get Spider-Man 3 from Insomniac? Spoiler alert, yes you are. Are you going to get Wolverine 2 or X-Men from Insomniac? Spoiler alert, if the game sells well, yes you are. But we need to see if it sells. But they will be making something else besides that. Is it going to be a new IP? Who knows? Is it going to be that they reboot the Resistance series? I think a lot of people would like that, but again, who knows? You'll get something, Batman. I don't know what that's going to be, but you'll get something besides Marvel from Insomniac. There's not a doubt in my mind. They're a studio that always is juggling multiple projects, a lot of creativity. I don't know that you're going to see another Ratchet and Clank game soon. You will get another Ratchet and Clank game. I just don't know that that's what's next. The game was highly awarded, and it did well, but I haven't gotten the impression, I'll just be honest, from any numbers I've seen, that Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart was an enormous sales success. I think the game sold well. I'm not trying to tell you that Ratchet and Clank bombed. I just haven't seen a ton of data that this game is like a giga seller, like a huge, giant, crazy seller. You're going to get another Ratchet and Clank game, guys. Don't worry. I'm not sitting here telling you guys that Ratchet's canceled. I'm just saying I don't know if the next Ratchet and Clank game is already in development or if that game's going to be a little on the shelf for a little bit, for a few years while they do something else, and then they'll come back to Ratchet. It's hard to say. For all I know, the next Ratchet and Clank game's already in development. Could be. But you're going to get something besides Marvel, Batman, that's for sure. You're not going to only get Marvel out of Insomniac. Randy Norman. I'm shocked that nothing has leaked about the Xbox showcase. It seems like they're keeping their cards close to their chest. So with 19 days until the showcase, what do you think will be there, Benji? Yeah, listen, I'm going to be honest. I hope that not much does leak. You know, I'm one of those guys that like, I don't really like when everything leaks out about these showcases beforehand, because I know it's marketing, right? You always see these hot takes, and this particular hot take drives me nuts. You see it from journalists a lot. Listen, journalists, I know some of you watch this stream. I respect a lot of y'all. One hot take I don't like, I'm just gonna be honest with you, and I'm sure I have some takes that you guys don't like either, right? We all have takes we don't like. One take that drives me crazy that you always see pop up after E3 or after something spoiled is you always see the hot take of, wow, you're upset someone spoiled commercials, like talking down to you. First of all, why are you talking down to people? That's just not a good look. Talking down to people, it's not a good look. People don't like to be talked down to, and there's no doubt when you phrase it like that, something someone's excited about, you're talking down to them. Try not to do that. The other thing is like, yeah, we like hype. A lot of people like to get excited. A lot of people like to be surprised. You know, I don't think there's anything wrong with sometimes reporting on stuff. Sometimes, yes, some of that's going to be spoilers, right? I do think that the video game industry is too secretive. That I do agree with. I definitely think that the video game industry is too secretive. But I also like some surprises, right? And I think a lot of people like some surprises. So Randy, it's inevitable some stuff about this is going to leak. It's just inevitable. It's always going to happen. These showcases, there's almost never been a showcase where nothing leaked. Maybe some stuff doesn't, but something always leaks. So you're going to see something in the next 19 days. I hope most of it stays, you know, on the DL, just so we can have a really hype show. But What do I think is going to be there? Obviously, Starfield. Starfield's going to get a big showing. It needs to be really good after this delay. I'll tell you that right now. Starfield always needed to look good, but now that it's been delayed, Starfield needs to look really good. Really. Like, it's got to be a great showing. So hopefully Starfield looks great because it has to. It cannot. It can't be like a Halo Infinite showing, right? Which I'm not expecting that, but remember the backlash that happened to Halo Infinite. There cannot be anything like that. This thing's got to look great when they show it. Starfield's going to get a big blowout. Forza Motorsport's going to get a big blowout. At one point, it was rumored heavily to be targeting this year. Is it still targeting this year? Who knows? Maybe it's been pushed back to next year like everything else. But Forza's going to be there one way or another. Whether it's this year or not, you're going to see Forza. You're going to see Starfield. You're going to see Redfall. Those 3 games are locks. You're going to see those 3 games. What else do I think will be there from first party? You know, I've said it before. I don't think you see Fable yet. I know Fable's been in development for years, but I still think that game is years away. I don't think Fable's coming until 2024. So I don't know that you want to show it. You could. I mean, you could show it if you just want to like put a ton on the table. You could. But I think they might save showing Fable till the very end of this year or next year because I just don't think Fable's next year. So I don't think Fable's there. I think there's a good chance Avowed's there because I think Avowed is coming next year. I think that will be 2023. So I think you'll see Avowed. And what else? I mean, they're going to have some new announcements, right? It can't only be stuff we know about. We know Avowed's already announced, Starfield's announced, Redfall's announced, and Forza's announced. You don't have a showcase and don't announce anything new. So those are the 4 announced games I think are very likely to be there. They're going to have a couple new announcements, maybe from, I mean, it's probably time for, what is the We Happy Few game developer's name? My brain is just not working. Compulsion. Probably time for Compulsion to announce their game. So maybe you see Compulsion here. And something else. But, you know, that's mainly what I'm expecting. Ghost Tunnels. Don't you think PlayStation fans should be worried that PlayStation is doubling down on mobile? No. Could that lead to less games on PS5? Is it even a smart move to switch that much resources to mobile? No. No. I put that as way less worrying than the service focused. And I'm not even that worried about that. But like if you're a PlayStation fan and you have to choose, like I'm going to be worried about one of them. Is it going to be the mobile stuff or is it going to be the like we're doing friggin' 12 games as a service games? If you're going to be worried about one of them, be more worried about the service games because there's a more of a chance that could pull resources from like these big single player games. The mobile stuff's not going to pull anything away, really. Like, those are completely different things. In fact, I guarantee you some of the ways they're going to be making mobile games is I'm not going to be surprised if Sony is going to be either licensing their IPs out to other mobile developers already, like doing a partnership, not necessarily licensing, but like having someone else make the game for them for their IP, or they might acquire a mobile developer. Like, that's not impossible. That they just keep in mind, everyone thinks of acquisitions being Square Enix, or they might buy a mobile developer to help them with it. So, no, like you're not going to have Naughty Dog devs that are like making quadruple A games all of a sudden be making a mobile game. That's just not the same sort of overlap. It's just not. It's not the same kind of talent in terms of like what you're developing. It's not the same. It's completely different development ethos. So I don't think the mobile impact will be much at all in terms of like making a flagship PlayStation game. You know what I mean? I wouldn't worry about that element of it. Because again, I just doubt you're going to see Naughty Dog all of a sudden all in on mobile development, Insomniac all in on mobile development. Like maybe a small game, like kind of how you saw Bethesda. Like there was a small team that wanted to make Fallout Shelter because they thought that could be fun, but it wasn't like pulling resources away from Fallout, like core Fallout. You know what I mean? So maybe you see like Naughty Dog or Insomniac make a mobile title, but it'll be just like it's not going to be the full studio. It would be more like, hey, we got a really cool idea for mobile, let's make this mobile game, and maybe there's like 50 of us that make it or something like that. You know what I mean? You're not going to see them just drastically shift their first-party core AAA studios into making mobile stuff. So I wouldn't worry about that, Ghost Tunnels. That element in particular, I wouldn't worry about. And some of these other acquisitions could be doing some of that stuff, right? Maybe Firesprite, you never know. We know that they're doing other stuff too, but maybe Firesprite could be doing a mobile game, you know what I mean? So I wouldn't worry too much. All right, we just got a super chat. A 5 super chat from Benji. Benji, could you please explain what goes into the decision to bundle a game? Why Horizon 2 has been bundled with the PS5? Why not Miles Morales? Okay. So there's a couple reasons you bundle a game. One of them is that a game has been out for a long time, right? And you're not getting a ton of sales from it anymore. You see that happen a lot. Like, that's a common thing. A lot of times you're just like, hey, if a game's been on the market for a long time, we saw that out of like The Last of Us Remastered, right? Which got a lot of PS4 bundles. Or we saw that with Horizon Zero Dawn, after a few years on the market, that got a bundle. In the case of Forbidden West, because this is a great question, I'm going to be flat out honest with you, Benji. I am surprised that Forbidden West got bundled so quickly. This does surprise me. I would think that you would want to bundle something that's been out for a little bit on PS5. Like, you would want to bundle maybe Ratchet and Clank, or like you mentioned, Miles Morales. Here's my guess, and this is a guess, dude. Like, I don't have any inside, information on why they made this decision at Sony. Who knows, really? But my guess, this is just a guess, I think they want to really accelerate the adoption of that game. They know it's such a big, important franchise for them, and it came out so early in the life cycle still compared to install base, and they know that the majority of people buying this game are doing it on PS5 and not on PS4, and it's a $70 game on PS5. My guess, Benji, and again, this is just a guess, I don't think it's a story that Forbidden West was a bomb, because like I said, in the last chat where we covered NPD, it's actually, I'll be honest with you, legging decent. Like, it's legging pretty okay, actually, now. The second month was a little, like, I don't want to say worrying, but it wasn't, like, the best second month ever in terms of rankings. Because I had some people asking me, they're like, this is an amazing drop for a second month, isn't it? And I was like, not amazing. Like, it's an okay hold. I think it was, like, 5th or something like that, maybe, on the overall NPD in its second month. Whereas, like, an amazing hold would be something like Elden Ring, right? Where that thing just freaking, it's ridiculous how that thing kept charting. But it was like, okay, but I mean, it's still, this last NPD, I want to say it was in the top 6 or something like that again in its third month. So the legs are like, all right, they're not like terrible, but I think they want to get a lot of people playing Horizon Forbidden West like as fast as possible. And that is my guess, Benji. My guess is that they really want to accelerate that Horizon adoption, because they want a lot of people playing that franchise. Keep in mind, we know PSVR 2 is going to have a Horizon game with it at launch. We all know, spoiler alert, I'm not going to tell you how it ends, but Horizon Forbidden West clearly sets up Horizon 3. Like, clearly Horizon 3 is coming. So that's my guess. Benji, I think they just want a lot of people playing Forbidden West. So I don't think this is going to be like a permanent bundle. It's probably going to be for more of like a short period of time. But that's my guess, but I don't know for sure. Oh, and Split End said I had 2 other super chats I missed. I'm sorry. Oh, I do. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Split End. For some reason, I'm not getting the super chat alerts on all of these. I apologize. Usually I get all the alerts. For some reason on this chat, it's not alerting me to all of them. So thank you for the call out, Split End. 2 super chats here. Split End 89 with a 2. Dream pick for PlayStation TV. Florence Pugh for Aloy Please. I think she could do a good job. That's a good pick. I saw someone quote tweeted my my post about this happening, and they had another good one. Who was it? The girl from Jumanji, and the one who also plays Nebula. She's also another decent choice. What is her name? What is her name? Karen Gillan. She's another decent choice, I think, actually. Decent. I like Florence Pugh for that. I like Karen Gillan for that. Who knows? But those were a couple choices. When I saw that quote tweet, I was like, oh yeah, it's a pretty decent choice. I can see that. That's pretty decent. She has kind of like that upbeat, like for example, both of those choices, Florence Pugh and Karen Gillan, they both have those like kind of upbeat personalities, which Aloy has, right? Aloy, even though she goes through hard stuff, a lot of her personality, she's kind of got that like more upbeat mentality. Not that she's not like sad sometimes, but she's not like, put it this way, she's not like an Ellie in The Last of Us who is like ultra hardcore, right? You wouldn't want that kind of, you wouldn't want a Florence Pugh playing Ellie, right? Like in terms of personality type. But I think those would work for Aloy. Those are good choices. Who knows? They might go with someone unknown that we don't even know, or who knows? It's always hard to say casting, but those are good choices. So my dream picks for PSTV, if you mean casting choices, here's going to be the hard one. Kratos is not going to be easy, man, because he is a massive human being. Like, I'm trying to think who they're going to get to play Kratos, because there's not a lot of people that are that effing huge who also have acting chops, right? So that is an interesting one. I know people are going to say Christopher Judge, and I love Christopher Judge. The dude's amazing. I mean, he is incredible as Kratos' voice. But I'm going to be honest with you guys. It's not going to be him. And there's going to be a key reason why it's not going to be him. He's 60 years old, which isn't the end of the world, but he's also just had like really extensive surgery on his back, on like his knees. You know, they're going to need someone that can be very physically active for this role. I love Christopher Judge. I hope he continues to play Kratos in the games for years to come. If he was super healthy, I would love for him to play Kratos in the show. I'm just being honest with you guys. I just don't think he's going to be able to physically, even though he's a huge dude, I don't know that he's going to be able to be like as active enough for that role. You know what I mean? Like in terms of playing it in a show. He's going to have to be very physically active. So it's probably not going to be Christopher Judge. So it's like, who do you get for Kratos, man? Of course, you're going to see people say The Rock. I don't hate The Rock idea as much as some people do, but it's also hard for me to think that they'll do The Rock. But I don't think it's impossible. If they announce Dwayne Johnson is Kratos, don't be shocked, guys. I don't think they're going to do that, but don't be shocked. He's not my number one choice, but like, he's giantly buff and he has some acting chops. I'm not going to say he's an Oscar-winning actor, but he's not a bad actor. Maybe. I've seen some people throw around Jason Momoa. I think that could work. I think you could do Jason Momoa. Would he want to shave his head, though? I mean, he's got those beautiful locks. Is he going to want to shave his head? You know, with Dwayne Johnson, the dude already is bald. So, I don't know. That's going to be tough, dude. That is going to be tough. What is that one guy? There's also that massively buff dude that was just on, like, Jack Reacher, I think it was, for Amazon or something. Maybe they go with that. I mean, he's got to be huge. This is one of those, like, rare roles where it's like, they have to be massively buff. You know what I mean? There's some roles that don't matter. You could be skinny guy. You could be a buff guy. Kratos has to be huge. Like, he just has to be. So, I don't know. That's going to be a tough casting. Ooh, okay, Samurai here saying, Guardians was incredible. I love it. Excellent storytelling, but yeah, I only checked it out via Game Pass. Yeah, I loved that game. All right, and what was the other super chat? There was 2 super chats you said I missed. Highlander here with a 3rd. Holy cow, Highlander. That's very kind of you. You don't need to do 3 super chats. Last super chat. After the Activision Blizzard deal closes, do you see Microsoft reorganizing the game studios to make development more streamlined? They need to, you know, we've talked about this. They definitely are going to have to do some serious internal work in terms of getting everything flowing. I've said this before. I think Microsoft, someone asked me this, I think on the last super chat, and it was a great point. They were like, after this deal closes, should Microsoft like slow down for a little bit on these acquisitions and really get their studios pumping these games out, you know, like we've been expecting from them? I think it's probably true. You know, like I said, maybe you do certain affinity because you want that locked up Halo support, you know, long term. But yeah, after Activision Blizzard, you might want to wait a little bit, man. You know, if you're Microsoft, you might want to chill for just a little bit until like your studios are hitting like clockwork, because that is the problem. For how many studios this company now owns, the fact that we're going to go, and this isn't being mean to Microsoft. You saw Phil Spencer himself say, like, in that tweet, I really respect the tweet he put out, where he was like, listen, we know the expectation, after they delayed Starfield and Redfall. I don't remember the exact wording, but Phil was basically just like, listen, we know that the expectation is better than, having all these delays. The fact that you have this many studios, and again, this is not me being mean to anyone. I guarantee you Microsoft management will tell you the same thing, that they could potentially go an entire year with maybe one exclusive from first party, maybe at best two, right? If Forza makes it and this rumored Gears collection makes it, okay, that's nice, but it would be 2 games at the very end of the year. They could potentially go 8 to 9 months of a year, almost an entire year, 3/4 of a year without a big first party game. That is a problem. Like, especially for a subscription service like Game Pass. So, I think maybe you do. Maybe you slow down a little bit. Make sure stuff is just hitting like clockwork. We're good. There's always going to be issues in game development, but where most of your studios are hitting pretty regularly, and then maybe you start to get a little more aggressive about acquisitions again after that. Maybe. But Highlander's a good question. They probably should slow down a bit after Activision. All right. Oh, Split End. I like this one. Winston Duke for Kratos? That's a good one. I like that. Benji says Dave Bautista. Listen, I love... Splend says Dwayne Johnson for Kratos seems too memey. Listen, he is not my number one choice. Like I said, not my number one. He's someone that maybe could pull off. Listen, there's some good ones coming in here now. Dave Bautista. Listen, Benji, I love Dave Bautista. I'm going to tell you why I don't think Dave Bautista is going to do it. Kind of for the same reason he said he's done playing Drax. He mentioned, like, he doesn't necessarily want to have to keep playing these characters where he has to be so jacked all the time. Like, he said that whenever he was talking about how, like, he was saying, like, I don't really want to play Drax much longer, because he was saying that, like, how old's Dave now? I think Big Dave's in his 50s. How old is Dave? Yeah, he's 53. And he said that. He was just like, I don't know that I want to keep doing these roles where I'm like constantly shirtless and have to be ultra jacked. At 53, that does get harder to maintain super buff physique. I love Dave Bautista. He's cool. Benji, I don't see him doing Kratos probably for that reason. But I love the guy. Edwin says, yeah, the Jack Reacher guy's getting roles. He's huge. Brant has a great one here. Alexander Skarsgård from The Northman. That could work. Great actor, too. Guy gets jacked. You guys got some good ones. I really like the Alexander Skarsgård one, and I really like the Winston Duke ones. Those are 2 great call-outs, actually. I could see either one of them doing great. Winston Duke or Alexander Skarsgård. Those are great choices. Great choices. All right. I'm going to be doing like 8 more minutes, and then I got to go. Okay, 8 minutes, and I'm out. 8 minutes, and I'm out. Thank you for a great chat, everybody. Thanks for being so awesome. What's up, JCat? What's up, Split End? What's up, Red Dead Series? Ryan Scott, hello, kind sir. Thank you so much. Jeff Keighley have said expect less showcases from third-party devs and less big AAA games in his show. So thoughts? Where else would publishers reveal their games? I guess maybe at Microsoft and Sony's show if they locked in a bunch of these third-party. Because here's the thing: a lot of games need to get announced. And a lot of games, even if they don't need to get announced, they need to get shown because we've seen like almost nothing of them. My guess, Ryan, would be potentially some of these games are going to be going to Microsoft and Sony's shows, but who knows? Who knows? It's a great question. Johnny G saying, what's up, Benji? What's up, Johnny G? Samuel Topear, what's up, Samuel? Great friend of mine. Samuel's a great dude. Check out his work at Windows Central, Android Central, stuff like that. Great guy. Benji, thoughts on the 3 newly confirmed PlayStation production shows? Personally, I'm excited for Horizon if it's animated. Live action feels like it'd be too expensive for Netflix. Samuel, I totally get that thought. I'm going to be honest with you, though. I think it's going to be live action. And the main reason I think it's going to be live action is I think, and I could be wrong, maybe this thing comes out and it's animated, but I think that Sony, like I mentioned before, wants their Game of Thrones. We all wish for that, right? Any company's going to wish for that, but it's going to be very hard to get that kind of success out of an animated show. Even for as hugely successful as Arcane was, animation does still, at the end of the day, I mean, I hate to say it, but it does limit compared to live action. For example, my wife, she will not watch animated shows. She won't watch Arcane. She loves Marvel. She wouldn't watch What If. And I know that might sound weird, and I tell her all the time, I'm like, listen, there's great animated content out there. There are people that animation's a barrier. They won't do it. They won't watch animated. And the reality is it's not a few people. There's millions of people like this that just can't get down with animation. I think that these are all going to be live action. Now, if they announce that Horizon is animated, am I going to be disappointed personally? No, because like I said, I like animation. I think there's awesome animated content out there. But I have a feeling that Sony's going to be aggressive on live action because I think they want these shows to be as huge as possible. And I think God of War and Horizon probably going to both be live action. But we'll have to see. I mean, Netflix spent $270 million on the new season of Stranger Things, so I'm not going to tell you they're going to drop $200+ million on Horizon, but maybe Netflix is still feeling a little crazy, and if they drop a $200 million budget on it, you could make it pretty awesome, but we'll have to see, right? You never know with Netflix. You never know. They're such a wild card. God of War to Amazon. I don't think Amazon makes necessarily the best content. I didn't watch Wheel of Time, but that was mixed. But Amazon definitely will give it a huge budget. Like, God of War is going to be expensive. I guarantee you Amazon's going to drop huge money on it. So in terms of budget, I'm less concerned about God of War. But I'm one of those people that loves Witcher Netflix. Like, I love that show. And so, I mean, I'm not as concerned about Horizon at Netflix as some people are because I love The Witcher. And I know they're very different, but Netflix has proven to me that they can make a live-action video game adaptation work. And I know it's based off the books, but we all know The Witcher... Listen, I'm just going to be honest. That Witcher show probably would not exist if the games didn't exist. We all know that the games massively elevated the popularity of that IP. Even the author himself has to know that. The books are cool. They're great. Some people like the books more than the games. The Witcher IP would not be near the success it is without the games. There's just no question about it. So I don't think that show exists without the games. So the fact they've proven that they can make that kind of thing, I'm not going to say it's a lock that that's great, but I'm not as worried about Horizon at Netflix as some people, but I do get it. Especially since Netflix cancels everything. Who knows? Maybe Horizon's awesome, they make one season and then they cancel it. You can never tell with Netflix. That's the disappointing part. The worry is that Netflix just cancels this friggin' thing quick. Brad Myers, what would you hope to see as the one more thing announcement for the Xbox showcase, even if it's years away? Oh. Maybe Gears 6? I love Gears of War. I know some people don't. And some people get bored of Halo and Gears and stuff, but maybe Gears. I loved Gears 5. I think that game's super underrated. I think Gears 5 had an amazing campaign. I think that'd be it, Brad. Minus a new IP. New IPs are always exciting, but you can't predict a new IP because who knows what it's going to be, right? Out of things that we know will happen at some point, Gears 6 would get me pretty friggin' stoked. Like, I love Gears of War. So probably that, Brad. Probably Gears 6. Logan or a new IP. Those are probably the two. Because I doubt it'd be third party. You never know. Sometimes the one more thing at these shows is third party. But I have a feeling like Xbox is trying to really focus on their first party more in these showcases. So I think if they do a one more thing, it'll be first party. I think, but who knows? Logan Hardy, Benji, about that 20+ major titles from first and third party for PSVR 2. Thoughts? Also, that big showcase must be soon, right? Yes. So, Sony's got to have some big showings soon because PSVR 2 from rumors is hitting in the first quarter of next year. God of War, we know. Listen, it looks like that thing might be September now. They have a lot of studios that don't have officially announced projects. So what do I think about the 20 titles? I think that's really good. Half-Life Alyx needs to be one of these games. We've talked about it before. I think that would be huge for PSVR 2. If Half-Life Alyx, because it said third party, Valve is third party. Listen, if you get that Horizon game day one for PSVR 2 and you get Half-Life Alyx day one PSVR 2, dude, that is some killer apps to have. Like, that could be big. I'm telling y'all, I have played Half-Life Alyx. I know a lot of people haven't because they don't have PC VR headsets. Dude, I'm telling you, it is incredible. So if they get Half-Life Alyx and Horizon at launch, that is freaking nice. Should the showcase be soon? Yeah, but I have a feeling it's September for the big showcase. But I hope I'm wrong. I got 1 minute. I'm going to take 2 more questions. 2 and I'm out. 2 and I'm out. 2 and I'm out. Wish I could do more. Wish I could do more. But I only got so much time because I got to go to work. Hamishly Ford's going to get one here. What up, Hamish? PS sales on PC are very impressive, and they're expecting a huge growth. I think we can expect GT7, Forbidden West, etc. to hit PC this year. Forbidden West, I think, actually has a chance, because I'm telling you, there's been rumbling since before that game came out that it could be 12 months or less on PC. I don't know that, but that has been rumbled. Forbidden West, I don't think is impossible. Gran Turismo 7... Maybe. I would say if I had to pick one that I think is more likely of those two, I'm actually going to say Horizon. Even though GT7 is more of an online focused game, but there's already been a Horizon game on PC. But I don't know. There's going to be big games. You don't get an 80 million to 300 million off of old ports only from Uncharted. Like, guys, some of these are going to be really big games. Like, there's just no way around it. Some of these are going to be very big games. You do not get 3 times growth without that. So, could be. Yeah, could be. Danger Man is going to get the last one. I wish I could do more, guys. I wish I could do another hour of this stream, but I literally can't. I have to get up. I have to get ready to go to work. So, Danger Man gets the last question here. Do you think the PS5 projected trajectory with Sony comment that this gen could, just like 2028 until a PS6, feels that way? I think shortages are tad overblown in terms of delaying this gen into 2030 way too long. Though I think if it gets pushed to 2029, 2030, it'll be fabrication node available, not current shortages. Okay, so how long do I think this gen is going to last? Minimum of 8 years. I cannot see a console coming out 7 years. So do I think that PS6 is out by 2027? No, I can't see it. 2028 to me is the minimum. And I'll be honest, Danger Man, I know it feels way too long. To me, 2029 and 2030 is not ruled out. And one of the main issues actually isn't just because people are going to focus on the chip shortages, right? I think part of the reason this gen is going to be so delayed isn't just because of hardware install base, it's because of software delays. So many of these companies have barely put games out for this generation yet. I don't know that those publishers are going to want to instantly rush. What if they get 1 or 2 games out on these consoles and then another generation right on top of them? I don't know that they're going to want to transition that fast. So I actually think that the software delays might be as big of an issue for this gen extending as the hardware was. I think that so many of these engines and like these current gen games have only barely started getting going. I mean, we're going to finish 2022 and there's still going to be barely any current gen games only out. Like, barely. Like, by the time this year ends, it's hardly anything, a handful of games. I think so much software got delayed that that's going to push things back a little bit too. So I don't think, like you said, is 2028 impossible, an 8-year generation basically, since they came out at the end of 2020? I'm going to say it's impossible, Could happen. I can't see less than that, though. Can't see a new console on the market in 2027. I do think it gets pushed at least 8 years and potentially a bit more. All right, everyone. I got to call it there. Thanks for a great chat. Thanks for all of the questions. Thanks for the super chats. For those of you that donated in super chat, I'm not skipping a week next week unless something catastrophic happens. I know I skipped last week, but there will be a live chat next week. Subscribe to my channel if you're not already. We do one of these chats every single week. So subscribe so you get notifications for that. Follow me on Twitter if you're not already. I'm Benji-Sales on Twitter. Odds are if you're here, you follow me on Twitter. But if you're watching later, follow me over there. That's where I do most of my work. And I'll see you guys later, all right? Stay safe. Play some games. Thanks for an amazing chat. Let me make sure I didn't miss any super chats. Let me make sure I didn't miss. No super chats missed. Okay. Bye, everyone. Bye. Have an amazing day or an amazing night wherever you are. See you. Bye. Bye.